This book, along with 2 others, was sent to me by Jerome Jones, the author. You can find out more about him and his books at healthykidsbooks.com. Hi, it's Desiree. My goal is to bring more books into your homes, from my bookshelf to yours. The Mystery of the Lost Recipe by Jerome Jones. Abby, Tommy, breakfast is ready, called their mother. Just as they arrived at the table, their father said, "Have you heard the news about the Orange Surf restaurant?" Tommy asked, "The news? What news?" Their parents explained the restaurant lost their lasagna recipe a few nights ago and they were losing money during dinner hours. Abby looked at Tommy excitedly and said, "Let's go." "What about breakfast?" asked their mother. "It's important." "We'll eat at the restaurant," the kids replied together. They ran out the door, grabbed their helmets and mystery-solving supplies, and rode down to the Orange Surf restaurant as fast as they could. Tommy looked at Abby and said, "Hey, let's eat a healthy breakfast before we start working on the new case." Abby said, "I agree. I can't wait to drink some orange juice." They both knew that eating breakfast was very important. It kept their minds sharp throughout the day, which was especially important with a new investigation. Arriving at the restaurant, the kids locked up their bikes with their stomachs rumbling. Beautiful town of Pismo. Tommy and Abby walked into the Orange Surf restaurant, and Parker, the head waiter, was there to greet them and take their order before they sat at their table. "Hey kids, how's the morning so far?" asked Parker. Abby replied, "We're here to solve the case of your lost lasagna recipe. But first, we need to eat breakfast." Parker said, "I'm glad you're here. I've heard about you two all over the community and everyone says you're good at solving mysteries. We really appreciate the help. What can I get you for breakfast?" Abby told Parker, "I want your fresh squeezed orange juice with 3 scrambled eggs and a side of fruit." Tommy ordered the orange juice as well, along with 2 strawberry waffles with fresh blueberries on top. After Tommy ordered, Parker said, "We're trying to find the strawberry waffle recipe right now. When we find it, we'll let you know." So, Tommy and Abby took a seat at their table by the window. This was Tommy's favorite place to sit at the restaurant because he could look outside and examine the waves of the ocean. A few minutes later, Brittany, the head of the kitchen staff, walked up to Tommy and Abby at their table. She explained, "We found the recipe for your delicious waffles. The dish will be right out." Abby quickly stated, "Where was the recipe?" "It was locked up in a protected safe in the back of the kitchen," said Brittany. Parker came out a few minutes later and gave Tommy his breakfast. Tommy really enjoyed his food and was about to order another helping when Abby said, "Before we eat more tasty food, we need to solve the mystery of the lost lasagna recipe." Tommy answered back, "That sounds good." "It sure does," Abby replied. "But without that recipe, the restaurant will lose a great deal of money during their dinner rush." "That's a good point," said Tommy. So the 2 mystery solvers went out to find the owner of the Orange Surf restaurant, Mr. Nutt. Abby knew if he wasn't at the restaurant, it could be a challenge to locate him in town. Abby turned to Tommy and asked, "Where do you think Mr. Nutt could be?" Tommy thought for a moment and said, "It's a good day to surf. Let's ride down to Rocket's surf shop and see if he's there." After a 5-minute bike ride down the coast, they pulled into Rocket's surf shop. Abby and Tommy walked inside Rocket's amazing, colorful shop. There were clothes, hats, and multicolored surfboards throughout the store. But the 2 mystery solvers didn't see Mr. Nutt. Tommy went up to Mr. Jones, the owner of the surf shop, and asked if he had seen Mr. Nutt this morning. "Tommy, you just missed him. He picked up his surfboard and went to the beach. He said he was going to hang 10 today," said Mr. Jones. "Let's go to the beach," Abby said in excitement. They hopped on their bikes and rode down to the beach to find Mr. Nutt. But when they arrived, Mr. Nutt was surfing out on the waves. He didn't notice them waving and yelling for him. Abby said in a heartbroken voice, "What do we do now, Tommy?" Tommy suggested, "Well, we did bring water and snacks. We could eat and watch Mr. Nutt surf." So the 2 of them took a seat on the soft sand and ate their fruit while thinking of questions to ask Mr. Nutt when he got out of the water. The healthy snacks always helped the kids think of more demanding questions. They couldn't wait to solve the case of the lost lasagna recipe. "Look, here comes Mr. Nut," called Tommy to Abby. "Hey kids, how are you doing today?" Mr. Nut said to Abby and Tommy in a cheerful voice. "Did you see me catch that last wave?" "Oh man, that was awesome," Abby said in a loud, outraged voice. "Mr. Nut, where is your lasagna recipe?" Tommy responded while smirking. "Well, if he knew where it was, we wouldn't be on the case." Tommy and Mr. Nut giggled. Mr. Nut smiled and said, "I had it last week when I made lasagna for the high school basketball banquet, but now I can't find it. I need that recipe for my dinner menu." Abby, Tommy, and Mr. Nut put their bikes and surfboard in the back of Mr. Nut's bright blue truck and drove back to the Orange Surf restaurant. On the way there, Abby asked Mr. Nut some detailed questions about how he might have lost the recipe. She wrote down his answers in her pink mystery case notebook. When they arrived, Abby, Tommy, and Mr. Nut went inside the restaurant. They needed to ask the employees some questions. They also wanted to look around the restaurant for clues and the recipe itself. Abby and Tommy sat down at their table by the window. They put their notes together on their laptops and brainstormed to try to solve the mystery. Tommy said to Abby, "Mr. Nut said he put it away in a secure, protected place, but he can't remember where." Abby and Tommy sat down at their table by the window. They put their notes together on their laptops and brainstormed to try to solve this mystery. Tommy said to Abby, "Mr. Nut said he put it away in a secure, protected place, but can't remember where. He did say he left the recipe in the restaurant that night." Abby thought about what happened at breakfast. She remembered the head waiter had used the same words, safe and protected. Abby asked Tommy a quick question. "The kitchen is next to his office, right?" Tommy looked at her and nodded his head. At that moment, Abby jumped out of her chair with enthusiasm and said, "I got it! I think we solved the mystery of the lost lasagna recipe." Tommy said, "It's about time. I'm hungry for this lasagna. I have been thinking about it all day." Abby ran through the kitchen to the back office where Mr. Nut was cleaning. She told him, "I think your lasagna recipe is in your safe." Mr. Nut walked with Abby to the back of the kitchen, opened his safe, and found the lost lasagna recipe. It was wrapped up in a brown envelope in the very back next to his strawberry waffle recipe. He replied in a relieved tone, "Wow, here it is! I must have put it here before I left that night. I usually put it in my desk lockbox. Inside my desk lockbox. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Tommy." Abby smiled and replied, "Well, it's our job, Mr. Nut, to solve mysteries and help the community." Mr. Nut was so happy he found his lasagna recipe. He looked at Abby and Tommy and said, "Dinner is on the house tonight." They were both overjoyed. Mr. Nut cooked Abby and Tommy the restaurant's lasagna dinner with some fresh squeezed, delicious orange juice. But Tommy had one last important question to ask Mr. Nut. "Mr. Nut, why were you surfing when you knew your lasagna recipe was missing?" Mr. Nut smiled and answered back, "It helps me relax." The next day, Mr. Nut decided to take the day off. He picked up Abby and Tommy and took them to the beach. He wanted to surf with them before they got busy with their next mystery case. Give this video a big thumbs up if you like this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out the Facebook page, My Bookshelf to Yours, where I post every day hands-on activities that go along with the read-alouds. Thanks for visiting, from my bookshelf to yours.